Hello! It's cozy season. So let's paint. Today I'm going to show you how to paint this cozy cabin window. This painting works for any size, but I particularly like 8x10 and 11x14. So you can freehand this, or I have printable tracers available in my Etsy shop. Those are linked down below. I have 8x10 and 11x14 size available. Or if you don't want to trace your own canvas, I have paint kits in an 8x10 size with a pre-traced canvas, all the paint you need, the 3 paintbrushes we will be using today, and a plate for mixing. Today, I'm going to paint using the 8x10 paint kit that's available in my Etsy shop. So let's do this. So for this painting, we're going to be using 8 colors. So we have white, black, like a golden yellow, Christmassy red, evergreen green, like a mid reddish brown. This one is called cocoa bean. A dark brown. This one is called espresso bean. And like a light turquoise blue. We will also be using a 1-inch flat brush, a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch flat brush, and a small round brush. With our 1-inch flat brush, I am going to get white paint and a little bit of blue. So it should look about like this. I've got a lot of white and just a little bit of blue because we're going to be painting this window scene back in here. We're going to make it look snowy, so we want just a tiny bit of blue. I'm going to dip mostly in my white. And I'm going to make horizontal brush strokes in those window panes. And I'm going to add just a little bit of blue. And if you get too much blue, just add more white. I'm not too worried about the lines of the window trim. I'm going to neatly go around them, but they don't have to be perfect. I'm overlapping those lines a little bit. So we're going to paint all 4 window panes the same way. A little bit of white, adding just a little bit of blue. And I'm going to rough it in around my candle. And you can use the smaller brush for these little detail areas where you want to get around a certain object. I'm just going to stick with my flat brush because I'm a little bit lazy. Don't forget this little corner between the candlestick and the window. So make sure you don't forget that little bit of corner right there. And make sure you're keeping your brush strokes pretty horizontal. I'm going to add some little streaks of blue back in and not blend them in all the way because that looks good if you add a little bit of variation. All right, now that we've got our window panes, I'm going to wash my brush out. And we're going to paint our green pillow. So I'm using the Hunter Green, and I'm going to grab a little bit of that. And I'm going to paint my pillow. So I'm just starting with the base layer of the Hunter Green. And And I'm still using my 1-inch brush. And I'm going to use the edge of that to make that clean line for the pillow. If you push your brush into the canvas, it'll help you get a clean line with your flat brush. All right, so now that I've got that in, I'm gonna take a tiny bit of white. I'm not washing off my brush. I'm just gonna take a little bit of white, really just on the corner of that brush. And I'm gonna sweep in on the edge of this pillow, just a little bit. And I'm gonna blend it a little bit by sweeping it a couple times, and then kind of blend that a little more. And that's just gonna make our pillow look a little fluffy. Now I'm gonna wash off my flat brush. And we're gonna paint some trees. We're going to be using this little round brush. So with our hunter green, we're going to get some paint on our small round brush. And I'm just going to add a tree wherever I feel like it. So I'm going to add just a little one back in the distance here. And I'm just going to start by making a small line, however tall I want my tree. And then I'm just going to brush out a little bit, getting wider as I go towards the bottom, and then I'll do that on the other side. Okay, and then now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fill it in just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm gonna add a tiny bit of white and kind of brush through it to give it a little bit of shading. So just a little bit of white. And now we have a little tree. So I'm gonna do that again wherever I want trees. I'm gonna put one of my trees behind the window pane. I'm gonna get a little bigger. So I'm gonna draw my line. And I am just drawing it over that trim because we'll fill that in later, so it doesn't really matter. Making my lines to kind of map out how big I want the bottom to get. There we go. Add a little more green. And then I'm going to add a tiny bit of white. I'm going to draw my last tree like it's really close to that window. So maybe you're on the second floor, you can see the top of that tree. So I'm going to put mine right about here, and I'm just drawing it like we see the top of it. So I'm going to bring it all the way down to our window trim, and then I'm going to make it pretty big. Drag it out a little further. All right, now that I've got it mapped, I'm going to fill in the branches a little bit. And then I'm going to put a little bit of white. And I'm just kind of sweeping it in, leaving some bright white and leaving some dark green. So I'm not blending it all the way. I'm just kind of leaving it. Just leaving it kind of rough. All right, now we've got our trees. I'm gonna wash off my brush and add a little trunk to the bottom of my trees. And we're gonna use the dark brown. I'm just adding a little tiny trunk to the bottom of these two trees because this one doesn't have one in our picture. There we go. All right, next thing we're going to be doing is painting our wood. So I'm going to be using the smaller flat brush that I have here. And we're going to be using both of our brown shades. So I'm going to start with the lighter brown that we have. And I am going to brush my strokes in the direction that our wood grain would be. So for these vertical places, I'm going to brush in some vertical strokes. And I am just, right now, I'm just blocking these in sporadic places because we're going to vary our tones of brown. So I am going to map this line here. Here we go. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to vary it with the dark brown. And I'm not even washing my brush off. Now I'm just going to sweep the dark brown in the places where I did not put the lighter brown. And you can make it as dark or as light as you want. If you want more lighter brown, do that. If you want it to be darker, make it darker. All right, I'm gonna grab a little more medium of this lighter brown. Now that this is filled in, I'm gonna take my brush and I'm just gonna smooth out my brush strokes a little bit. Now I'm very lightly touching the canvas. I'm not pushing down with my brush. I'm just very lightly grazing the canvas with my brush to kind of smooth out. There we go. That gives it a good wood grain look to it. So now that I've got this, I'm going to fill in the rest of our windowsill. Don't forget to fill in those little areas like in the middle of your coffee mug handle. And you can use the smaller brush for this. I'm using that small round brush. And I'm just filling it in with the dark brown. I'm not worried about making a super variation in that tiny little area. And I'm going to go around with my small brush by my coffee mug just to get a good detail, just to be able to get in there. And then around the candlestick base. All right, so now I'm going to do that light brush stroke, but I'm going to do it horizontally this time. And I'm just gently grazing the canvas with my brush to blend it just a little bit. All right, let's fill in the rest. Going over that tree. And the very last spot is this horizontal trim right here. Oh, and don't forget this little one right down here. So we'll do that one real quick. I'm going to use the small round brush here in a minute to get in those little nooks and crannies. Just using my flat brush to get those straight lines at the top. And right here. All right, now I'm going to switch to my small brush. Using light or dark brown, whichever one you prefer. And I'm going to get in these little nooks and crannies in here, right up against my pillow. And around my coffee mug. Don't forget that little spot in between your coffee mug handle. It's easy to miss sometimes. All right. And it looks like I may need to fill in just a little bit with my hunter green right here. So I'm going to do that real quick. I didn't take my tree quite down as far as I should have. But that's an easy fix. There we go. All right, continuing with the brown. Getting around these little places with the mug. And in between my mug handle, in that little spot in there. All right. So now, before we move on, in those places where you had your tree behind your trim, I'm gonna go over those. They should have dried just a little bit right now. So I'm gonna go over those one more time to get that tree to finally go behind that paint, just to give it a little extra thickness so it doesn't show through. There we go. Let's paint our mug. I'm going to be using the little round brush for this and our red paint. And we're just going to block in that mug. So I'm coming all the way around. I'm going to paint this rim up here. And around our warm, delicious beverage. And don't forget your handle. All right, so we're gonna work on that mug just a little bit more. So this is gonna sound kind of funny, but we're gonna take a dip of red. I'm gonna put it on my mixing plate. And then I am gonna take a little bit of green and we're gonna mix those together. It's gonna make like a purpley red brown. Once I've got that, I'm just gonna use it to brush the edges of my mug to make it look rounded. So I'm just gonna take it around the edge here, and then I'm just gonna use that to sweep it out just a little bit. Now this doesn't take much. And I'm not making my blending perfect here. I'm leaving it kind of rough. I'm gonna do the other side. I'm gonna sweep it down like this. And then I'm gonna bring that out a little bit. And I'm gonna sweep it around the top just a little bit, not all the way. I'm not making like a solid line, I'm just kind of giving it a little hint. And then at the bottom, we'll do a little hint at the bottom. And then I'm gonna bring just a little few strokes in the middle there, just a few. And then I'm going to pretty much fill in the foot of this little mug right here. Just this little bottom part. And then around my mug handle just a little bit. So I'm gonna go around the bottom edge, just kind of giving it a little hint. I'm using very, very light brush strokes. And then on that mug, once I've got that on there, I'm gonna wipe some of my excess paint off the brush. I'm gonna get that brush almost to where there's really not a lot of paint on it at all. You want it to be kind of making strokes like this on your plate. And then I'm gonna just sweep over on the handle just to blend it in just a little bit. Since it's such a tiny little area. And then don't forget the back side of your mug. Nice. All right, now with our little round brush, we're gonna be adding the warm beverage to our mug. I am painting coffee, but if you wanna make it look like hot chocolate, maybe a little creamier, you do you, boo. So I'm gonna start with this dark brown, and I am just gonna fill it in. Nice. All right, so staying with our round brush, I'm gonna grab some white and we're gonna paint that candle. And I know the canvas is already white, but the reason we'll do this is because it'll help us blend and get the shading right. So I'm gonna block in that white. And this doesn't have to be perfect since the canvas is already white. We just want to get some paint on there so that we can use a darker color to blend. Okay, now we're gonna add a teeny tiny bit of black. Boop, and I even got a little much there. So I'm gonna take my plate and I'm just gonna get a little bit of that off there. The reason for that is that black goes a really long way. So I'm even gonna get just a little bit of white on my plate and mix a gray color. All right, so now I'm gonna brush that gray around the edges of my candle, kind of like we did with the mug. So I'm gonna brush it down on the edge, and then I'm just gonna very gently kind of sweep that color in just a little bit. And then we'll do that on the other side. So coming to the edge and then sweeping it out just a little bit. And then on the top part here, I'm just gonna paint this pretty much gray. And I'm gonna add a little bit of white back into it. All right, so now we're gonna paint our candle holder. I'm using that golden yellow, and I'm just gonna color block that in with my little round brush. Okay. All right, now we're gonna add some little details with white and our tiny round brush. I'm gonna add some highlights around my mug, just around the top of that rim. And we're using a very light touch. And I'm not lining, I'm just adding some little peaks of light around that edge. All right, now I'm gonna add some little peaks on the top of my mug handle. And I am using just a very, very light touch. I'm barely touching that canvas. I'm also gonna brush the outside edge of that handle just a little bit. And then the top of the inside bottom. So right in here, I'm just gonna give it a little swoop. And then I'm gonna give it a little bit of light right where that mug meets the handle, just to separate it just a little bit. And a little bit around the edge. All right, now I'm gonna add some highlights to my candlestick. So I'm gonna add just a little bit here on the top. And I'm not creating one solid line. Just to kind of give it a little bit of dimension. And I'm gonna do the same thing here on this little tier down here. And right here. And then I'm gonna sweep some white along this candlestick place right here. So just a little strokes right here. And then I'm gonna put a little bit on that base. And then I'm gonna put just a little bit right here on the back end. There we go. We're also gonna use white to kind of separate this place where the windowsill meets the vertical part. So I'm gonna get a little bit of white, and right here where it kind of juts out, I'm gonna just add a little bit. And again, we're not lining, but we are kind of adding that definition in there. And then I'm gonna add a little hint of it coming up, because that's a corner. There. And then I'm gonna add little hints of that line back in, up. Like that. So we'll do that for all the places on the windowsill. And where these lines, I'm trying to kind of stagger these lines so that they're not like a perfect dotted line. So try to stagger your lines a little bit where they're parallel with each other. There we go. All right, I'm gonna add little lines to my cross sections here. Again, I'm staggering where they're parallel. And then just a little bit on this side. And a little bit down here. And maybe a little between that little space in the coffee mug handle. And then I'm gonna add a little bit where that cross beam meets right here. And then maybe right in here to show that those are separate pieces. And don't forget to add a little swirl to your beverage. So I'm gonna add just a little swirly pattern in here, just kind of sweeping little bits of white. Just like that. All right, let's put a candle wick in there. So I'm gonna get a little bit of black, just a tiny bit. And then I'm gonna add a little candle wick from just a little bit above that candle down to show that candle wick. I'm also gonna add some black details. So this is gonna be the same way we did the white, but we're just gonna add some little black lines to kind of give it some more depth. So I'm gonna go a little bit on the outside of my mug. This is a point too, where if your white is too bright, you can tone it down a little bit by putting some black over it. So I'm gonna do the edge of my mug just a little bit here. On this side a little bit. I'm gonna sweep just a little bit of black, so right up in here underneath that top part of the handle. I'm also gonna add some black lines where we added white to our woodwork. So I'm gonna add a little bit here. I'm also using this to tone down that white just a little bit. All right. Okay, let's paint that little candle flame. So I am gonna get my mixing plate and I'm gonna use a little bit of that golden yellow and some white. And I'm gonna mix those two together. We're gonna make a pretty light yellow, so you're gonna add quite a bit of white. All right, that should be good. So I'm gonna add my little flame, and I'm thinking of it like a little teardrop shape. Just like that. All right, very last thing. I'm gonna use the back of my small flat brush, and I'm gonna dip it in my white paint, and I'm gonna stamp snow where I want it in my window. And I might put it on top of a tree. I'm gonna put it on this tree a little bit. And you can just dot it wherever you feel like. And there we go. We have ourselves a cozy window. Thank you for painting with me. If you like videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for painting with me today. See you next time.